I can still hear the sound of silverware against porcelain, sharp and hollow, like nails scratching inside my skull. Family dinners were never peaceful in our house. They were performances. My father sat at the head of the table like a king, my mother on his right, smiling faintly as if she were carved out of wax, and my siblings, James and Clara, lined up like perfect little soldiers. And then there was me, the mistake, the shadow in their spotlight. That night, the air was thicker than usual. I could tell something was coming. Father had been sipping his whiskey in silence, which was dangerous. He only stayed quiet when he was building up to an explosion. I sat at the far end, fiddling with my fork, hoping invisibility might protect me. It never did. Annie, my father's voice cut through the clinking of glasses. Everyone froze. I looked up, trying to mask the fear crawling up my throat. Yes, Father? My voice betrayed me. It was too soft, too cautious. His eyes narrowed, sharp and gleaming under the chandelier. You've done nothing but bring shame to this family. Lazy, ungrateful, always taking, never giving. James smirked into his wine glass. Clara bit her lip to hide a smile. They loved this, watching me burn. I don't understand, I stammered, heat rushing to my face. I've been trying. Trying? He slammed his glass onto the table, whiskey spilling across the white tablecloth like blood. You don't belong here. You're not part of this family. You never were. The words hit me harder than any slap. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Not part of the family? My stomach twisted. Mother finally spoke, her voice low and cold. He's right, Annie. We've carried you long enough. Her words sliced deeper than his. My own mother. Clara leaned forward, her tone sweet but venomous. Maybe it's better this way. You've always been different, difficult. And James, with his perfect golden boy grin, added, Don't take it personally, sis. You were just never one of us. I looked at their faces, each one familiar and yet monstrous in that moment. They weren't my family anymore. Maybe they never had been. I pushed back my chair, heart pounding, and stood. My legs trembled, but I forced myself to stay upright. You're really going to do this? My voice shook, but there was steel hidden under the cracks. Father rose too, towering over me, his shadow swallowing mine. Get out of my house. Tonight. And don't you dare come back. Silence. No one stopped him. No one begged him to reconsider. Not even my mother. I waited for someone, anyone, to defend me. But they sat still, like statues, watching me fall apart. I felt something inside me snap. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thread breaking. Fine, I whispered, my throat raw. But remember this moment. I grabbed my coat, my bag, and walked out into the cold night air. The door slammed behind me, and with it, the last piece of who I used to be. As I stood on the street, shaking and alone, I swore to myself. They wanted me gone. They wanted me erased. But they had no idea what they had just created. The night I left the house, the air outside was sharper than I remembered. Cold, biting, merciless. I walked with no destination, my bag slung over my shoulder, stuffed with only a few clothes and notebooks. I didn't even have money in my pockets. My father had made sure of that. He cut me off months ago, claiming I needed to learn responsibility. Responsibility for what? I never knew. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel smaller than you are. Each step I took echoed louder in my ears than the next. I kept thinking about the table I had just left, the chandelier light, the expensive wine, the laughter that would continue long after I was gone. They would go on as if I'd never existed. I ended up at the bus station, sitting on one of the hard metal benches. The fluorescent lights above hummed like insects, and a homeless man snored in the corner. I clutched my bag tightly, as though it could protect me from the world. Hours passed. Nobody came for me. Nobody called. My phone stayed dark, silent. Not even my mother checked to see if I was alive. That's when it sank in. They had planned this. That dinner wasn't an accident, it was an execution. For the next few days, I drifted, couch to couch, friend to friend. Some let me stay for a night, others offered fake sympathy before telling me their parents wouldn't approve. Eventually, I ran out of places to go. The first night I spent on the street was the longest night of my life. I curled up on a park bench, the wood hard and unforgiving beneath me. Every sound made me flinch. A passing car, a barking dog, footsteps crunching on gravel. I felt stripped of everything human, reduced to nothing but fear and hunger. By the second week, the hunger grew unbearable. I would stare through cafe windows at families eating breakfast, the smell of coffee and fresh bread drifting out, taunting me. I stole once, a half-eaten sandwich left on a tray. The shame burned hotter than the hunger. Every night I dreamed of home. Not because I wanted to go back, I knew I couldn't, but because my mind replayed it like a cruel joke. The dining table, my father's voice, my mother's silence, my siblings' smirks, over and over again. And every morning, I woke up angrier. The world wanted me to break, my family wanted me to disappear, but I couldn't. Not yet. One night, as I sat under a broken streetlight, rain soaking through my thin coat, I pulled out my notebook. The pages were wrinkled, smudged, but they were mine. I wrote down everything I remembered from that night, every word, every expression, every detail. Then I wrote down memories from years before, the birthdays they forgot. The Christmas mornings where James and Clara got gifts piled high while I got nothing but a half smile. The way my mother looked at me like I was a burden she never asked for. The times my father told me I was weak, worthless, a mistake. By the time I stopped writing, my hands were trembling. But something had shifted. I wasn't just recording memories, I was building evidence. And deep in my chest, where despair had been living, something else began to grow, something sharper. Revenge. It's strange how rock bottom changes you. At first it crushes you, strips you bare, makes you feel smaller than the dirt beneath your shoes, but if you survive it long enough, something shifts. You stop waiting for help that will never come. You stop begging for love that will never be given. You start sharpening yourself. For me, that turning point came on a night colder than all the rest. I'd been sitting outside the library after hours shivering, clutching my notebook like it was the last piece of me left. A janitor walked past, paused, and said, "They open at 8. He probably thought I was just eager for books. He didn't know the truth. I was waiting for warmth. The next morning, I went inside, and it became my sanctuary. I sat for hours in the library, pretending I belonged, pretending I wasn't a girl without a home. I read everything I could: law, business, psychology, spoiled children, and expensive clothes. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They weren't untouchable. They were fragile, brittle. And I was the only one who knew exactly where to hit. The library gave me tools, but work gave me strength. Rosa's Cafe became my lifeline. She offered me shifts, food, and most importantly, kindness without questions. With each paycheck, I saved. With each book, I learned. With each day, I grew sharper. And slowly, I began to realize they hadn't destroyed me, they had trained me. By the time a year had passed, I was no longer invisible. I had savings, skills, and most importantly, a plan. Education had become my weapon. Connections, my shield. Information, my dagger. Through Rosa's Cafe, and I brushed shoulders with businessmen, politicians, gossiping elites. I listened, learned, and collected details the way others collected coins. A careless receipt here, a loose comment there, small things that, together, formed leverage. One night, I slipped into a networking event, dressed in a borrowed gown and a forged badge. There, I was not Annie Henderson, the discarded daughter. I was Annie Gray, confident, sharp, untouchable. They believed me because I carried myself as though I belonged. And maybe by then, I did. I left that night with business cards, promises, and something more valuable: certainty. I drafted my plan. 1. Isolate father. Expose the corruption in his empire. 2. Ruin mother's image. Strip away her perfect facade. 3. Break James, destroy his fragile career. 4. Shatter Clara, use her vanity against her. 5. Take back power, stand over their ruins, not as family, but as their reckoning. They thought they had erased me, but soon I would erase them. Revenge began softly, like rain. Father. Through whispers gathered from a nervous accountant, I unearthed the truth. Hidden accounts, bribes, fraud. I stitched it all together and handed it anonymously to a hungry journalist. Headlines screamed weeks later, Henderson Enterprises under investigation. The king was bleeding. Mother. Her secret lover became my weapon. Discreet photos, whispered leaks, strategic releases. Her polished mask crumbled. Society abandoned her. The queen became a scandal. James. His pride built his empire. I became Annie Gray, the investor with irresistible offers. Every deal I handed him was poisoned. His company collapsed under its own weight. The golden boy was nothing but dust. Clara. Her vanity was her weakness. Through fake accounts, I gained her trust, then destroyed it. Leaked messages, raw photos, exposed lies. The Princess of Perfection was devoured by the audience she once ruled. One by one, they fell, and I stood in the shadows, invisible but powerful. The stage was set for the final act. It was poetic, returning to the same table where they had exiled me. This time, they weren't gods, they were ruins. Father's empire in shambles. Mother a social outcast, James bankrupt, Clara disgraced. They had summoned me back, not with love, but desperation. Annie, father said, his voice hollow, you came. You asked, I replied. They shifted, uncomfortable, broken. Finally, Clara whispered, we need you, Annie. Need, not love, not remorse. Need. I stood, looking each of them in the eye. Do you remember that night, I asked, when you told me I wasn't part of this family? When you threw me out into the cold? They looked away. No one answered. I leaned forward, my voice sharp as steel. You thought you buried me, but all you did was plant me. And now I've grown into the storm that destroyed you. Silence pressed on the room like a weight. I straightened, turning toward the door. You don't get me back. Not as a daughter, not as family. What you see now is not the girl you betrayed. What you see, I paused, letting them feel the fire in my words, is your reckoning. And with that, I walked away. They had thrown me away, but I had come back stronger than they could ever imagine, and I had won.